How's it going, everybody? In this video, I wanted to cover some topics regarding the new CCNP exams that are coming out in February, because February, let's face it, is coming rather quickly. We only have December and January left before the new exams drop, so about 2.5 months or so, 2 3/4, something like that. Is that enough time to get prepared for some of the new exams? I think so. But what I want to go do is I want to talk briefly at a high level about the new certification program and put my perspective and a couple of my opinions regarding the new certifications out there in terms of how should you approach the certification based off of my understanding of how the technologies that the exams are going to be covering, the way that the new exams are structured and things like that. I haven't seen anybody do a video on this, and been one of those things where the more and more time I look at the exams, the more and more clarity I get from them and interpretation. And so what I want to do is I want to spend the next little bit of time going through and trying to give everybody at least my opinions and my take on what's happening with the new exams, because if you don't approach it correctly, or if you are one of those type of people that follows the blueprint verbatim, whatever is on the blueprint, you follow that to the letter. I definitely don't recommend that approach necessarily, only because the fact that in my experience taking Cisco exams, and I feel like I've taken a lot of Cisco exams, I've passed my fair share, so I've got a decent amount of certifications under my belt and that I've been able to earn. But at the same point in time, I've learned over the course of time that just because it says this on a blueprint doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't cover this or add that. So what I'm going to try to do is do my best and try to paint a picture and help you guys understand how you should approach this. Now, we have 6 new CCNP level certifications, okay? We have Enterprise, Data Center, Security, Service Provider, Collaboration, and then DevNet. Now, I personally am going to be going after the Security exam, the Collaboration exam, and the Data Center exam. Those are going to be the 3 new CCNPs that I go after. Now, I will be going after some of the specialization or concentration exams inside of Enterprise, and I'll talk at a high level briefly what I'm intending to do and how I'm going to approach that. So that's the purpose of this whole video. Now, what I want to make sure that everybody understands here is that this is by no means the only way about going about the certifications. It is my best attempt to maybe help you if you're like not sure how to go after it or something like that. Maybe a little bit of guidance in that particular area. Now, if you're looking at my my bookmarks bar, you can see I have a lot of documentation bookmarked for a variety of different platforms, and that's on purpose because I really don't want to spend the navigation time clicking on a link going here. I just want to go to the bookmark, pull up the documentation, scroll to wherever I've got to go, and be done with it. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you guys about is the replacement for the routing and switching certification, which is the Enterprise Cert. Okay, now this Enterprise certification is broken down into a core exam and as well as all the other tracks. There's a core exam per track. So Service Provider's got one, Security's got one, Data Center's got one, Collaboration has one. Now, I'm going to talk about the tracks that I have the most amount of experience with, but a lot of what I'm going to be describing and trying to explain is probably going to be applicable to all the different tracks. So just bear with me as we go through here. Now, you have the core exam, right? And I find a lot of people talking about going after the core exam as the first exam that you should go after. And I'm At first I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That would be like going after route if you're just coming into the CCNP. I know a lot of people have gone the switch route first, and so they've gone to after the switch exam. They've taken the switch exam, then they go tackle route so that they have a win almost immediately. If they did a lot of layer 2 preparation in CCNA, then the switch exam should be relatively easily. Yeah, I shouldn't say relatively easy. It should just be you stepping out a few more steps beyond what you've already done to knock out the switch exam. Because in the reality of things, there's not much beyond switching that you would really get tasked with in the CCNP that you wouldn't have already known in the CCNA. VLANs, trunking, VTP, spanning tree, ether channels, a lot of that same stuff is the same. It's just they might dive into a little bit bigger of a topology, maybe add some functionality like StackWise or VSS, or VPC if you're in the data center track. Now, the route exam was much more involved, took a lot longer to go over, so it made sense why people would go with the switch route first, go the switch exam first, then the route exam, and then T-shoot. But normally people would do route and switch before they would do T-shoot because they would have to know a lot of things from route and switch in order to pass T-shoot. And that's kind of my angle as well. So I'm treating the new core exam kind of like somebody would with the T-shoot exam, where, in my opinion, anyone that's going after the core exam should be spending time in the other exams first. What I mean by that is, if you look at the Encore exam here, and we look at the exam topics real quick. Let's go ahead and pull that up real quick. Let me go ahead and expand these out real quick. So when we look at the architecture, we look at virtualization, we look at infrastructure, we look at network assurance, we look at security, and then lastly, automation. One of the things that you're going to see as you go, let me go ahead and scroll back up to the top, is you see architecture at the very top, right? Well, architecture is going to be something that you're going to have to understand, and it covers quite a bit of topics. It covers SD-WAN, it covers SD access, it covers wired and wireless quality of service. It takes a look at hardware and software switching mechanisms. So it's taking a look at a lot of things that are more hardware focused, more solution focused, as well as hierarchy and topology focused, as well as Wi-Fi and some cloud and some off-prem solutions and deployments. Now, with that being said, do these all make sense? Well, they do to a point. So could somebody go and dive into this exam, the core exam, and just read enough to be able to know what the exam is talking about? Yeah, I'm sure they could. However, my approach to this would be a little bit different. I would actually leave the core exam last. You might say, well, why would you do that? It's the first exam. It's the lowest numbered exam number in this particular area. And I would say you're right. But just because it's the lowest numbered exam number in the CCNP Enterprise track, I don't believe that means anything. All that means is that's the exam that's going to be kind of taking all of the information from all of the other concentration exams and taking a lot of the high level, most important details from those other exams and kind of co-locating them into a single exam, where you're going to get architecture, you're going to get some virtualization, you're going to get some infrastructure, you're going to go in and you're going to get some assurance, you're going to get security, and you're going to get automation. So they're literally taking bits and pieces from all 6 exams, and they're culminating that into one core exam, so that you're hitting a little bit of every exam. So what would that mean for the average person? Well, that would mean, at least in my eyes, that if you were going to go after CCNP Enterprise and not focus on CCNP Enterprise Wireless, you are going to need to take on the NRC exam, which is the Enterprise Advanced Routing and Services exam, the SD-WAN exam, the design exam. Then you'd have to go knock out designing wireless networks, the implementing wireless networks, and then implementing automation. Because if you look at the core exam, the way that I'm interpreting this is that there would be questions from all six of these tracks, all six of these exams, all these concentration exams. You would get some questions from those exams on the core exam. Obviously, probably at a much higher level. And when I was reading through this, I was like, okay. So, for example, the way that I'm interpreting this is with layer 2, they want you to be able to troubleshoot static and dynamic trunking, ether channels, and spanning tree. Okay, well, there's no discussion here at all about a VLAN. Okay, nothing. But this is implied when you have trunking that you have VLANs, right? That's going to be That's going to be an implication. It's going to be automatically applied to the technology because it's talking about trunking. And what do you do with trunking? You trunk VLANs. Now, when it comes to the routing, compare EIGRP and OSPF. Well, I see a bullet point that says talk about EIGRP and how it's different than OSPF, or compare it to OSPF. But then I see configure and verify simple OSPF. But then it says including normal areas, summarization, neighbors, adjacency, and stuff like that. And then configure a basic EBGB pairing. The wireless, same thing here. Configure some basic things about wireless. There's a lot of wireless here because there's its own dedicated section for wireless in the CCNP Enterprise. You don't go into much detail about how to do that here because that's what the wireless section is for. And then they have the services, NTP, NAT, first hop redundancy, and then some basic multicast. Network assurance is the same concept because you're going to have to deal with things like SNMP, NetFlow, SPAN, IPSLA, understand how data center or DNA center works for network or the SD access, and then NetConf and RESTConf, and how that would be used to do programming a router remotely through a network device through a script. And then security, there's obviously going to be a decent amount of security that you're going to have to understand, but a lot of it is going to be just the basic stuff. Configure basic access control for a device, ACLs and control plane policing, and then do some basic wireless security features like EAP, WebAuth, and pre-shared key. So a lot of this stuff is pretty simple, right? A lot of it's the high level, the basics of that particular technology suite. However, if you were to ask me how I would go about doing this, I would attack these exams in the opposite order. I would start off with the NRC exam. Then I would move to SD-WAN, then I would move to design. Or, I mean, you could do them in any order you'd like here. But I would recommend not doing them, or doing them first. Do the concentration exams first, get them out of the way, and then go take the encore exam. And the reason why I say that is because if you go to the core exam, you're going to get a bunch of technologies that are going to be talked about, or you're going to be tasked with answering questions on, and you're already going to have a deeper understanding. And that's the whole thing. You want to be able to study more than what you're going to get asked questions on in the exam. And you might say, okay, well, if that's the case with your logic, then I would need to take the NRC exam. Let's go ahead and take a look at it real quick. This exam is kind of in depth. Let me go ahead and just expand these guys out. Here we have layer 3 technologies where we dive into, guess what? There's a bunch of EIGRP here. Guess what is not on the encore exam? They barely mention EIGRP right here. So when I look at that and I see what they're asking you to do, EIGRP is the most commonly deployed routing protocol I've ever seen. Now, that might not be saying a whole lot depending on how many environments you've worked in or what you've seen in your career. You might work only with OSPF, but in my experience, EIGRP is the most common routing protocol to deploy because it's easy to work with. But on the NRC exam, they have a pretty detailed layout of how EIGRP should be tested. And they're testing out a lot of stuff. So you would have to know how to do all of this. And then you look at OSPF, same concept with OSPF. Same thing with BGP. BGP, they're going deep. So what that would mean to me is in the core exam, you would need to take BGP, OSPF, and EIGRP to this level of detail. Is that a lot? Yeah, that's a lot. This is basically the T-shoot exam. The NRC exam is basically T-shoot. So what I would say is if you're going to go study, for the exam. You need to go and dive into the technology as if you were studying for a CCIE. Because eventually passing this exam here, the NRC exam, will qualify you for the CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure Lab exam. So if you pass this exam, you're automatically qualified to go take the lab. Does that mean you're ready for the lab? No, it does not. It means that you basically have learned a little bit about everything, which is what the old written exam covered. I mean, I've taken it a few times myself. I hate the written exam. The current written exam for the CCA track sucks because of the fact that it's such a wide plethora of nerd knobs and trivia that, I mean, when I was studying for the SP written exam, I had to take the damn thing 5 times because it was so much content. And I used the written exam as a way to judge, okay, am I on the right path? So I would drop $450 every 6 to 12 months to see, okay, am I on the right path? Because it would take me 6 to 12 months to read up on the stuff that and lab out and test some topics that I hadn't done very well on the written exam. And I'm just lucky that I was able to take a written exam at Cisco Live in San Diego. And then I came really close. And I was like, you know what? I'm so close, I might as well just, because I had to recertify anyway. So I might as well just, pony up and just knock it out again. And so I came back about a month later and I was able to pass. But if it wasn't for that concerted effort, going back and, okay, where am I at here? I wouldn't have known what to study. So with that being said, the NRC exam is going to be testing you on a lot of deeper dive on troubleshooting. VPN technology is the same concept. Here it's going to be configuring basic DMVPN. When I say basic DMVPN, it's going to be tasking you with a single hub, so one router or one hub router, and then probably 2 spokes. This configuration is not terribly difficult to set up, but it can be. And that's something that if you've never dealt with DMVPN before, I know when I first started learning it, it was a big hurdle. And I had to spend a lot of time understanding how it was working and looked at a lot of the NHRP and GRE and EIGRP debugs to try to figure out, okay, what's all happening here? And eventually it became something that I became comfortable with. Now, security is the same concept, right? We look at security, we see it's a lot of continue to troubleshoot. So you can absolutely 100% correlate the NRC exam to T-Shoot. But in order to be prepared for the T-Shoot exam, you would need to be proficient in a deeper dive understanding of how the routing protocols and layer 2 switching work. And that's because if you look in here, you'll notice there is no layer 2 talked about. It's only layer 3. It says layer 3 technologies. It does not mention anything about layer 2. So your layer 2 technologies are going to be talked about right down in here. And they don't talk about much. I mean, you get one subtopic on one portion of the exam. So if we were to break this up into a percentage-wise, you're looking at, let's see, we have 30% broken up over 4 subsections, which means if we did the simple math on that, let's say that 7.5% of the exam is this guy, but there's only 3 bullet points. So 6% of the exam might be layer 2. That means that the other, let's see here, we have routing. The other, maybe let's say 10% here. I think, in my opinion, that would be a lot more than 10%. Is a lot of routing. But if you look at the NRC exam, they're testing you. They're saying, okay, you need to know all this. So in the core exam, it's basically, to me, it's a kind of a sprinkling of a lot of the additional capabilities of the routing protocols. Now, if we look at the SD-WAN exam is very similar. Now, not everybody's going to have access to download the operating systems and not have Viptela available and stuff like that. This is going to take a deeper dive. But as you go through here, it's going to be configuring, verifying, doing the policies, and stuff like that. So a lot of this stuff is going to have to be done. You're going to have to go through some training, get your hands on some gear, and play with the technology. There's really no getting around it. And the same thing with design. Design is going to be doing the exact same thing. We look at the enterprise design, and we go through here, and this is basically CCDP. And I was actually looking at the CCDP, the current, I think 300 320 exam is the current iteration. And I was actually very tempted to go out and just knock this exam out before the end of the year and have the certification knocked out so that I would have the DP done and go for it. Because a lot of the stuff I'm familiar with. I mean, the majority of this stuff I could talk about at length in detail, and I would be okay because I can do most of this. This is mostly route switch, and they have some security. They have some SD-WAN stuff. I'm planning, and there's some data center stuff in the current CCDP that I've dealt with and stuff like that. And they do some service provider stuff, but the majority of the CCDP blueprint, I'm familiar with the topics. Now, with that being said, I would still highly recommend anybody that's going after the any of the new CCNPs to take them concentration exams first and then knock out the core. And because in the core is going to give you a lot of the high level stuff, some configuration elements, but that's how I would go about doing that. So now if I close this guy out and this, let me go over to security real quick because that's going to be the first certification that I go after. Now, security has a ton of exams in here. And it's unfortunate that they've decided to do this the way that they've done it. But if you're looking at this exam the way that I'm looking at this exam, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different exams. So the way that I'm recommending everyone approach these exams is approaching them again, the same thing with security, do the concentration exams first, and then when you get to core, then you'll be in really good shape to go knock out score and have a really good understanding of what's going on. Now they talk about firepower, next-gen firewall, next-gen IPS. These are going to be two separate technologies, so you'll have to know how to work with IPS. One thing that I recommend everybody do is, I went out and did this a while back. I just have to actually go through the paces of doing it. Is go and get a ASA 5506X. Go out. I picked one up. I think it was $300. Go out, pick one of them up, and then if you have the ability to download firepower software, whether it's through Cisco's website or elsewhere, I'm only saying that because people are resourceful. They're not going to just, if they don't have access to it on Cisco's website, they're going to pull up their Google Foo and they're going to find it. So I recommend the majority of the stuff like the ESA and the WSA, you pretty much need a Cisco support account in order to support these. The VPN exam, you can pretty much get away with this if you have ASAs and if you have iOS routers. If you've got if you pay for the viral access, the viral personal edition, and you just pay for the license, you'll get access to this this code right here. You'll just be able to download the ASA image and deploy it, and the iOS V image. They both support site-to-site and remote access VPNs. As a matter of fact, I've got a lab spun up as we speak that I'll be taking advantage of to do all this stuff with. ESA and WSA, these are going to be appliances you can deploy, but they're going to require licensing to work. ICE, you can download, I'm pretty sure for free out of the gate, and then you get a 90-day license. And then the same thing with Firepower. If you have the ability to download the software, then you get 90 days to play with it full featured. So if you blow through your 90 days and you need more time, just reinstall. That's basically all I've done. And then when you've gone through the exams, then go hit the score. So my goal is to hit the VPN exam and then go and take the core exam. But I will do some reading up on the ESA. So like out of all these solutions, WSA and ESA are going to be my weakest areas. I've deployed lots of VPNs. I've deployed firepower in the FTD devices a few times. I've got some experience with IPS on ASA as well as in the IPS sensor, the NG-IPS, the virtual version. So I would have to spend some time with email and web, but once I do that, then I should be in pretty good shape here. I've done some ICE deployments as well, so I have an understanding of how ICE works. So again, knocking these exams out. Do you have to take the exam? No, you don't. But what I would recommend you do is go through the material on the exam and then go sit for core. And if you've already done the test, the training on it, well, it makes sense at that point in time to go ahead and knock out the exam itself. Now for data center, same concept applies. You've got several exams in here, and one of the things that, as you're going to see here, now I'm not a data center focused person. I have done some work in data centers. I am definitely not going to be a expert in this particular arena, but what I will always recommend is people approach this with the same effect. If you are looking for to knock out the data center CCNP, I will be going through the let's see, my goal, and I don't really have any access to the MDS 9K. I'm not sure if that's the actual Nexus 9K, but I plan on going through the Nexus 9K platform and learning about it. I will have to take some training on ACI and the infrastructure components of that. I would like to eventually pass my CCNP in data center. And then lastly, collaboration is the same applies for collaboration. So I plan on taking these exams, and remember, you only need to pass two. One, the core, and then one concentration. So you could take collaboration application. So I plan on going through the CCNP collaboration, the current CCNP collaboration. I actually pay for an INE All Access Pass. I've had one for a while now, and I will go through the CCNA voice that Mark Snow did, and then I will go and do the CCNP collaboration that Dean Babbage, I think is his name, that he did. I'm planning on going through his material as well, and learning about collaboration, because I've got phones deployed in my home network. I'd just like to know more, and my goal is to become more well-rounded. And am I going to take these exams one right after another? No, but I figured if I can knock out CCNPs, that's going to give me a much broader understanding of what's going on, and they're not terribly difficult to pass because of the way that they've made the structure. They're more modular, so you can basically pick and choose what you want to study. And if I choose to go after a CCIE in any one of these tracks, well, obviously I'm going to have to spend the time on that particular track. I'm going to have to go through all of the exams to make sure that I'm more than ready to go take the CCIE for that particular track. So that's my interpretation of the current the upcoming professional certification program that's coming out in February. You don't have to follow my recommendations. You can do whatever you'd like, but these are just what I think would be a good idea and how I'm going to approach it. So for security, I'm going to do the VPN exam. I'm actually, once I'm done with this video, I'm going to go back to studying and studying SSL VPN in a little bit more in detail, covering some topics that I'm a little weaker on, and I'm going to start labbing the crap out of it. As I already know ASA, the firewall portion of that. I'm also going to dive into iOS and zone-based firewall and that type of stuff because it's something that I want to dive into it again. And I'm going to start spending more and more time on that so that I can get ready for the actual exam. And my goal is once I've knocked out the security, the VPN exam, and I've knocked out the core exam, I'm going to plan on knocking out firepower, then ICE, then WSA, then ESA, and attack them one platform after the other. And then move on to data center and start attacking it, and then start attacking collaboration and knocking it out. And at some point in all of that, I want to go and finish up the SP CCIE. I'd like to go get the security CCIE, and I think by going through all this training, it will take a while to go through, but by going through the training, I will be basically setting myself up for success to do that for the CCIEs, because the CCNPs, if you take your training deep enough for this at the CCNP level, then that's less time you have to spend later on down the road for CCIE. So that's the way I look at it. You might not agree with me on that, but that's okay. But that's my opinions. I'm sticking to them. Thanks so much, everybody, for stopping by. Until next time, guys, take it easy.